To manipulate history is to manipulate consciousness. And to manipulate consciousness is to manipulate possibilities. And to manipulate possibilities is to manipulate power. Power. Welcome to the show. We got a great show for you today. I think we're doing okay in Cleveland, considering. I think early this morning, tomorrow morning, or some people say late Saturday night. I think we changed the daylight saving time. If I'm not mistaken, I thought we was through with that. you know, I hope this be the last year of it. But hey, the kid, he's gonna be waking up. It's gonna be a little darker in the morning, and we're gonna lose a little of that light in the evening. But yeah, it's Cleveland. We're gonna handle it. I can't complain too much with the weather. We're gonna be around in those 50s, upper 40s, 50s for the next week or so, and that's not too bad heading into these winter months. And it's not too bad. Not too bad. This year has went real fast, but we're hanging in there. Got a great show for you today. Great show for you today. In the remote studio, we got Brother Vince. What's going on?
Well, I can tell you why we got this hour that we're going to gain tonight, and that's
Mhm.
because the Senate got it right. The House of Representatives dropped the ball. So the Senate was ready to move full steam ahead, and the House
Yeah.
said, hold up, wait a minute. We ain't quite ready yet. So we got another year of that. Who knows? Maybe next year things will change. But here we
Yeah.
are once again.
Yeah.
So,
Dang, I
yeah,
was looking forward to that, man. Just staying the same. I was looking forward to that, man.
yeah, well, the bright side is that we get an extra hour of sleep, and I'm not going
Yeah.
to complain about that. Well, so
Mhm.
I'll take it, but next year I'll be ready to go without it. How about that?
Mhm.
All right. We got an event that's happening at the African American Museum today. It is Challenge of the Fifth Dimensional Spiritual Change. It's presented by Dr. Adetokunbo Barishade. She's known as Madam Barishade to some of you. It starts at 2 o'clock, and you can get your advance tickets for $15. So you got about 3 hours to do that. But the subject of the lecture is Challenge of Fifth Dimension Spiritual Change. So you don't have anything to do today, and I'm sure you do, but this is something that you might want to do.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Going down to the museum and make that happen. Get your knowledge on was always about that. And I think these are trying times, and I think we should maybe shift a little bit, the things, some of the consciousness, and some of the things that we do as a people, because a lot of things are going on, and I think we should be more in tune to some of those things. So let's do a little bit less recreational stuff and a little bit more intellectual uh, building, of ourselves and community and things like that. Because I think this is the time. So we got, you know, you have to be under a rock to not know that there's a lot of things going on the planet. So with that change or with that activity that we're having on the planet, that calls for us to be a little bit more in tune to things that's going on and aware of things that's going on. We ain't even talk about AI or anything like that, or anything, or the threat of them saying this new virus situation may be coming up, and God knows the restrictions they're gonna try to impose on the people or whatever. And I really think it's gonna be a serious pushback. So
Wait a
with
minute.
that,
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Another virus situation.
oh yeah, yeah. They talking about this is gonna be it's climbing the ladder, it's getting bad, and certain areas they think they might even this other type of virus. I think it was India or somewhere they think it got it is contained, and I've been reading some upticks in COVID here and there. So they've been threatening us, and it's more transmittable than last one and all this. So God knows where we're headed with this.
Okay.
All I
So
should say, keep beefing up on your supplements, to keep that immune system going. That's what I suggest.
right. And most of all, be aware of the benefit of melanin in your body. We're going to get that straight from the gate. My man, Dr. T. Owens Moore, is with us. He's here to tell us about some of his journeys around the globe with brothers in Colombia and all other parts of the world. And speaking of brain power, We've got to use our brains, and we have the expert that can maximize our effectiveness when it comes to brain power. He is Dr. T. Owens Moore. Welcome to our show once again, brother.
Welcome, well, the baddest brothers in Cleveland. I appreciate hanging out with y'all. That's some sharp
Always,
brothers.
always a pleasure to have you, brother.
Absolutely. You're like I say, a scholar, a brother, a friend, and you keep, in contact with us up in Cleveland, keeping us plugged in and on some things that we need to know. And like I say again, every time we call on you, you always deliver, brother. So
Appreciate that.
we definitely want to keep this type of relationship going. So,
Yes.
my brother, my
Yes.
good brother, it seems like you've been, well, I guess for a long time, you've always been recognized in your peers, but your peers called you out uh, to present somewhere.
Yes.
Would you tell our listeners about that, brother?
Yes. I just returned from Florida A&M in Tallahassee, Florida, and I have much respect for the Department of Psychology and what FAMU produces. They are, I think, like one of the number one HBCUs in the country in terms of their research level. They had a conference on France Fanon. It was the 14th annual conference, and it's talking about the battle for unity. And you just talked about some issues of us as an African people not knowing what's going on in the world, but not many people know about who Frantz Fanon is, which is a shame. I mean, he passed away in 1961, age 36. Wrote 4 monumental books. Number 1 was Black Skin, White Mask. Wrote Dying Colonialism. Wrote the last book on his deathbed was called The Wretched of the Earth. And then the other book is called Toward the African Revolution, and that was pretty much a compilation of his other articles. But the brother has had a dramatic impact on the world in terms of consciousness, and that's what you two do with this program. You try to raise the consciousness of people, and so down at FAMU, they had scholars. They've honored Naeem Akbar in the past, Wade Nobles, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, Kobe Cambone. I mean, they are hard hitters down there. So I took my time and went on down to present a presentation called Fanon on Fire, his impact on revolutionary movements as in today. So that's what we discussed this past week at FAMU.
Mm. You know what? A lot of times, Doc, you know, and some might call some of our past leaders prophets or seers or clairvoyant or however you want, because they, and it may not even be that, that just might be the struggle that we're in, because it seems like we're, at times stagnant, where some of the issues are some of our past greats, the Marcuses and the Martins and the Megers and, all the ones who fought for civil rights and black folks' positions and place in history, things like that. Seems like they foretold where we at and where we stuck at, and brothers like brother Fanon was speaking about the necessary and the need for this coming together and trying to point us in the right direction of what we should be doing, and it's just amazing how that tends to, we tend to be stuck there. What's your thoughts on that, Doc?
Well, I think the way you two are able to present this program, you're pretty much there in the Cleveland area, but you're all over the world because anybody can tap in to the internet. So Fanon, he came from Martinique, an island called Martinique. He was influenced by scholars like Amy Cesar, who was from Martinique, Leopold Senghor of Senegal. So he's influenced by those before him that gave him a sense of what it meant to be black. And in French, they called it negritude. And that's over in France. Over here in America, we have black consciousness. I spent time in Brazil. They have something called blackitude. You see what's going on in the francophone countries right now in Africa. They're telling the French, get out, get out. So on a geopolitical level, there are scholars that have been there to reach other countries, other cultures. And as Fanon is a black man from Martinique, thinking he's a Frenchman, I'm going to go fight for the French army, he started saying that this is not the right way to be. So he joined the Algerians. He switched and flipped and went to the Algerian side to help them. If you ever seen a movie called The Battle for Algiers, a 1966 film, it kind of explains the way that the Algerians got rid of the French, and because that was like the French's little background, a little playground over there in Africa, but they got them out of there. So Fanon was very instrumental in helping them out with their revolutionary movements. And then with his book, Wretched of the Earth, shoot, man, the Black Panthers use that as their handbook for revolution.
Okay.
The Wretched of the Earth.
Okay.
So they use that one for their revolution. So again, if you fast forward to think about the francophone countries today, you ever seen that brother from Burkina Faso, Raheem Touré? He's like, look, ain't no more days like those, like Malcolm X used to say. So they try to take all the resources in their land, and on a geopolitical level, if we don't support one another in that context, we can't win.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. And then and I guess at those particular times, you know, saying he wrote that book talking about unity, you know, and that seems to be the call, you know, for our enlightened ones, you know, for a long time, talking about this unity there, you know. Fanon on Fire, you know, kind of like what you kind of summed up. What was you know, your delivery there, and what you tried to get across at the conference?
Well, basically, if you think about all of us who are here today, I mean, we didn't come up with this knowledge on our own. I just mentioned about the French influence. Sheikh Anta Diop spoke French. He was from Senegal. You know about him, African Origins of Civilization, Myth or Reality. One of his proteges is Theophile Obenga. He's still around, talking about philosophy and the pharaonic connections to African people there in Kemet. But Fanon has this quote in his book called Black Skin, White Mask. He says, "And so it is not I who make a meaning for myself, but it is the meaning that was existing, waiting for me. It is not out of my bad niggas' misery, my bad niggas' teeth, my bad niggas' hunger that I will shape a torch with which to burn down the world, but it is the torch that was already there, waiting for that turn of history." That's us. We got to take the torch and pass it on. So many of our youth don't know anything about this name, that name. I get tired of going to class right now and say, "Have you heard of? Have you heard of?" Because they haven't heard of.
You know what? And that's an interesting point too, there, Doc. You know, you look at those past great scholars like that, and you know, and it's one way you can look at it is being a little sad that some of the things that they talked about, they never got a chance to see it, you know, see it come to fruition, and but then you look at their purpose, you know, and you spoke of that torch. Was their purpose was to just to keep that torch lit until a appointed time, you know, and to when this movement was ready, and now we talking about, and we seeing, because our folks is not paying attention, you know, as much as they should. You know, that those events which you talk about, the francophone countries over in Africa doing what they're doing and standing up, and in other countries like Zimbabwe and other, you know, around the continent of Africa, talking about, hey, America, you know, you ain't gonna tell us what to do, you know, and they see a way out of it, and dealing with India and China and that whole trilateral situation that could take place. Those are historical things there, brother Doc, and I think it's going to take us in another direction. Your thoughts?
Yeah. So for connecting this to Fanon, again, Black psychiatrists. If you look at that same, remember when Boys in the Hood, there was a scene where the brother was sitting on the couch, and then all the things were going around, but there was a commercial about the army and being all you can be. And we know us growing up, to be all you can be, join the army. So it's like a propaganda kind of message. Well, that's how Fanon was in his mindset. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna fight for the French," because he thought he was a Frenchman, not a black man. So when he now came to realization that, my goodness, there's some tragedies in this world, and studying under Amy Sassar and Leopold Senghar and that Negritude movement and looking at history, he didn't feel that. He said there is no white world, there's no white ethic any more than there's a white intelligence. There are in every part of the world men who search, and that's like us right now. I'm not a prisoner of history, so that's why he wasn't stuck in the past. He wasn't looking at the pyramids and start talking about the Sphinx. He wasn't into that. I should not seek therefore the meaning of my destiny. The body of history does not determine a single of my actions. I am my own foundation. And that's what the danger is with the melanin recessive man thinking about us as African people. Oh man, when they start to get their own and they start to thinking for themselves, we in trouble. That's why France is in trouble, because France depends upon the resources coming from Africa. And that stuff gets cut off, the game's changed. That's why they do whatever they can, coup upon coup upon coup, to get their
Yes.
puppets in place. And that's why the people who are
Yeah.
in place now, they said ain't no more days like those.
That's you see, and that's something I talked about and tried to stress in one of the interviews we had in the past, talking and letting our listeners know that France and countries alike that has their hand in the pot in dealing with Africa, they're not going to take this line down. See, those countries is like their rental property. You know what I mean? And they're not going to walk away and give it up. So if they can't just come in and just drop a bomb on them, and they're going to do the same tactics that they used to try to disrupt, destabilize the country, cause all kind of negative propaganda and things. I'm just saying, our listeners should understand. We need to look at that and understand what exactly going on. When it started taking place, and you start hearing all this crazy negative propaganda going on, you best believe it's the disruptive machine that they usually and the tactic that they usually do, in order to
Yeah.
regain what they think they may be losing.
I don't know if you can see my shirt, but it says France Renan.
Right.
It says
And they,
anti-colonial hero.
Mhm.
Anti-colonial hero. So when we think
Mhm.
about neo-colonialism, that's just a new form of controlling people. So that's what's been going on for years. Think about the same thing happened in Haiti. That's neo-colonialism. But the Europeans not going to give up that land, and land is the basis of all revolution. Like the whole Russian-Ukrainian thing is about land, resources, and now it's disrupting the way the world thinks. And the reality is, if we shared, worked, and unified, it would be a different story. But you got the greedy people. Greedy people want
Want
everything.
it all. Yeah, that reminds me of what Dr. Henry Clark said. He said the man got a problem with fractions. He wants it all. It ain't about sharing. And I mean, and I think that's another thing that our people need to understand just like, you see, they got us in check over here. They got us with wanting shiny things, and so a lot of us is comfortable. They promote a few, and we strive to get to where they at, but it's a plan and a plot to keep Africa where it is. Going back to Burkina Faso, Niger, actually, going to Niger, where France was getting that uranium for, I think it was 80 cents. I think it was per kilogram or something to that nature. And now they just say, hey, you guys gonna pay 200 euros
Hmm.
in order in order to get it. That's a big difference. So when you got things like that going over the whole continent,
Yeah.
they're them actually raping the continent, and then we as a people look at what's going on over in Africa. Why they can't come up? Why they this, it's been a long calculated plan to keep Africa the way it is. And I just think we have to drive that home when we look at Africa and look at its conditions. We got to understand that all eyes, all them northern hemisphere continents, you know, did what they could, by coming together, like in Berlin, at the Berlin conference, said that their job is to keep Africa underfoot. That was their mission, and we need to understand that.
Let me ask you two brothers, what y'all know about Walter Rodney? Walter
Walter
Rodney.
Rodney. Yeah, I've
Yes.
heard the name.
We just, I think me and my brother just mentioned his name not too long ago. Yes.
And mentioned, got to study Walter
Hmm.
Rodney. He wrote How Europe Underdeveloped Africa.
Yes, that's what he was talking about. We was talking about that. Yes.
So I'm
Hmm.
at home. I'm in the wrong
Yeah.
room. So I can't go get the book and show you off the library.
Yes.
I
Uh-huh.
met his wife. She is still pushing his work. She has the Walter Rodney Foundation. So if you get a chance to explore that, fantastic. But his book
Yes.
still stands firm, and he was assassinated by his Guyanese government. He's from Guyana. Guyanese government for his ideas. He helped out with the Jamaica, and then in 1968 they call them the Rodney Rebellions. That's why they allowed him back in Jamaica. I went to Tanzania this past August, was trying to walk in the footsteps of where he was. He was at the University of Dar es Salaam teaching. I tried to find the people who were influenced by him and who had some engagement with him. So just walking that path, because just to say you heard of the name, but you got to study the work that the man produced, because we're still seeing today the underdevelopment. There's a reason why they keep Africa undeveloped. And then you fast forward to think about Haiti. I mean, from what I'm understanding, those so-called powers that be, now they got black people trying to go and colonize them. They got the Kenyans coming in to do some things. How you gonna have Kenyans or black people coming in to help modify stuff? And all it's about is the resources. From what the conference I just went to, brother from Haiti said it's about that iridium. Who's going to control the iridium? It's like a real rare metal that is found there in Haiti. So it's not about giving those people freedom and helping them out. Now it's about which countries will control them resources.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that sounds like the same game that's been going on for a long time, man. It's about control, and people must understand that, you know, the powers that be that will go to great lengths to keep that under wraps, you know. But now, you know, if you believe in any kind of prophetic writings and teachings and things like that, you don't stay in those positions, especially on a lie and on in this and living in deceit forever. You know, you can't, you know, you don't stay on top forever. You know, those things start coming and breaking down and tearing down. And so I think we are on the cusp, you know, because I used to of this whole downfall right now. I used to say that, hey, is it a blessing or a curse to be living in all this turmoil and things that are going on right now? I think we're on the cusp and on the beginnings of this whole global change, you know, good, bad, or ugly. That's why I say fasten to your seat belts and let's pay attention and let's go for this ride, you know.
So for your homework, I want y'all to look at this video, a documentary called "What They Don't Want You to Know." It's about Walter Rodney. So it came out in past April of 2023, but that will give you a sense of his impact for what the governments did to kind of silence him. But his work still stands. You said, well, Fanon, his work still stands. When we go, our work will still stand. It's just a matter of that torch. How will that torch be passed on for it to properly be analyzed, for us to make an impact and change? Now I look at the way Africa's changing right now. It's having an impact.
It is, and I can't shout that and toot that horn, you know, loud enough. Yeah, you know, I'll be trying.
Okay, it looks like Brother Antonio's signal has dispersed. He'll be back in just a few moments. Here we go.
That this internet thing or whatever, but it looks like that is you know, you can see that it really coming to fruition as people are really starting to make a change and make a move there, and we have to be in tune to that, you know. You got something else, Dr. You say?
Yeah, either one of y'all military men?
Dad was military, so 22 years.
You remember, you heard of Maurice Bishop?
Maurice Bishop. Can't say that I have.
Okay, well, we need to know, but that's the front of that documentary called "What They Don't Want You to Know About Walter Rodney." You see that?
Okay.
Plug it in.
Yeah, I see.
That. Maurice Bishop. Come on now, Maurice Bishop, Grenada. Remember the United States under Reagan went in there because they scared of the so-called Russians having a base nearby, and
absolutely
they assassinated Maurice Bishop. You know why they were scared? And you go check out a lecture he gave at Medgar Evers College in New York, where he lays it out. Because he even at that time period back in the 80s, late 70s, he said, look, we support the Palestinians. You know, look, they are with us, we're with them. But in the mix of his conversation, he's saying that the reason why they were scared of Grenada because it wasn't Cuba or Venezuela where they spoke Spanish. These are black people talking revolution. Oh my goodness, that's too close to America. Shut them down. And the United States government went to go get him. So I'm just saying that our military has done some things that have disrupted the way that the world operates. And so when you got the powers that be and the people in place in the White House, they might not represent what I stand for. And that's why when we travel the world, the people don't really hate us. They hate the government and the structures that create the problems in the world. So we have to then know the names of the people. I just mentioned the two people, Walter Rodney. So your audience needs to go study them. Maurice Bishop, your audience needs to go study him. Frantz Fanon. So as we put it out, guess what? We're lighting those torches. And people then start waking up like, man, people have already discussed this. We behind time. We got work to do.
Absolutely. And you speaking on your travels, Doc. What's the sentiments? I seen you down there chilling with our good brother Naeem Akbak was in Tanzania,
Yeah, that was
and
Tanzania.
yeah, Colombia. What's the sentiments? What's the feel? What's the feel of the brothers? In the places you've been in your recent travels.
People aren't watching our
What's the
news.
energy?
They're
Huh?
not. They're not watching our news. They're not in our world. They don't worry. They're just handling their business. That's why these
Hmm.
outside influences are the problem. I've been to Belize, been to Jamaica, went to Brazil, uh, again spent time in Tanzania, and but just came back from Colombia. They're not worried about America. People are doing what they need to do in their space and their time. So as we go to share, wow, we're sharing things that they hadn't heard of. As I said, we're talking about things right now on this program that we hadn't heard of. So as we then go abroad and share, it helps to create that connection and that web. But there's no real friction with the people. It's the governmental structures. Even in Tanzania right now, they have a problem with their current president. The past president, they say, had died of a heart attack, but people had a
Right.
problem with him. He was running things. You look at Haiti, that past president, he was assassinated. I don't know how you get assassinated by your own people. You get your own security team, and you got assassinated with your own security team around. So that was took him out. So this president right now, what I hear is making deals with the United Arab Emirates and the foreigners with their port system, like selling the port system to those individuals. And it kind of makes sense because have you ever been to Dubai?
No,
No.
not to.
Neither have I. Guess what? Ain't nothing up there. It's sand, dirt. They got to import everything. So where they gonna get it from? Africa. Get the ports. Guess what? Control that. Guess what? You now have a way to keep your stream and your flow and your life and livelihood. So when we start selling off our port systems and things like that, it puts us in a bad position. All this technology that we have and the computers that we're on, when they start to go and the batteries are now no of use, where do you think they make the deals to get rid of these batteries? Throw that stuff in Africa and right there in the ocean. It's terrible. So the deals that are
Wow.
being made by some of these governmental leaders is what the problem is. But they don't necessarily have a problem with us as a people. They appreciate us when we travel.
Well, just like everything in change, though, Doc, is the youth, huh? The youth is it's not they don't seem like to be on another wavelength. The youth there.
Africa is the youngest population on the planet. Africa has the youngest group of people when you compare continents. Given that, you see how we have a longevity in the history of the world. I mean, we're the mothers and fathers, and we're going to be the enders, the last ones. So the youth, yes, are there, but you know as well as I do, this social media, man, has just cut people's heads off. So most people are then here in the media and pushing buttons to get answers rather than going to the sources in the books. How many people reading anymore? People ain't reading anymore. So you're not reading. How can you strengthen your vocabulary? How can you strengthen your knowledge base? So the youth are no different than the youth over here because they get caught up
Mhm.
in again what the media says, and everybody's trying to be American or I don't know, capitalist or whatever it is. I mean, to have money, like that's driving life. And I think that we have now people explaining that spirit and collectivity and unity, which comes from our tradition, is what's more valued. So we can win when we start producing that. But when people start seeing the media, like when I was coming from Colombia, they had a Colombian young brother driving us back to the airport. And on the radio, they playing reggae. So he appreciated the reggae, and he's like, "Hey, y'all like reggae?" I said, "Yeah, yeah." And then Bob Marley, "No Woman Will Cry." You know what I mean? I said, "You know the
Mhm.
words?" He says, "No, I don't know the words," because he speaks Spanish.
Mhm.
But he knows that our rhythms and what we influence others to do uh, is impactful. But the language was where the disconnect was. Didn't have the same language to kind of appreciate it.
Yeah, all right. We're gonna bring Brother Vincent to the conversation. Brother Vincent, what's happening? I know you want to
Yeah,
comment on.
interestingly, you made a comment a few moments ago, Brother Hamtonio, about us being on the cusp of change. And it seems as though we are moving towards being on the cusp and into the midst of the change. When we talk about colonialism, I was just thinking that we've got like a new colonialism. The old colonialism was the European so-called powers getting together at the Berlin Conference and deciding to carve up Africa and give this country this portion and this country that portion. Now the paradigm shift has moved to Russia and China. So I'm curious, Dr. Moore, about your perception of this new power dynamic and the influence that Russia and China are having on the politics and the commerce of the continent of Africa.
Yeah. I think the geopolitics is the real important word here, because the enemy of my enemy can be my friend. These are Machiavellian kind of approaches. The friend of my enemy is my friend, and that kind of thing. So just because Russia has been doing these things does not mean Russia's the enemy of all black people. If it wasn't for Russia, those African countries wouldn't have had
Yes.
independence. Why? Because they
Yes.
have any weapons. If you look at Haiti right now, where them weapons coming from in Haiti? How them gang members getting these weapons? You know where they come from? And you can look at the registry and the serial numbers. United States. So those who are providing weapons for your freedom, how could they now be your enemy? So that's why Cuba will never be an enemy to African people. So for maybe European powers, but not for African people. So what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, that's white people fighting white people. That ain't our fight. You can get in the middle of that if you want to. The African countries may be depending on the flow of the grain, and the disruption of that flow may then impact Africa. And so now you got Putin now discussing with those African leaders. Those African leaders have met with Putin, and now America's telling the African leaders, don't you do that. And so the African leaders are like, who are you to tell us not to do that? So now people are stepping up in leadership to say what they need to do to support one another. So China is over there in Africa building stuff. One's in Tanzania, smooth roads and some bridges that were constructed by the Chinese. China's in Kenya doing that, making the railroad system. So China is helping. So I wouldn't necessarily say that they're coming in as the new colonist. I mean, certainly there's some books that can be written on both sides about that. The point is that they need to have development, and the Chinese are helping with that. The Russians have provided weaponry in the past. So how can they now be enemies to Africans? They're not.
Yes. Well, also, when you look at what's going on in Niger and the crux of this being energy resources, the liquid natural gas, and the other things that the Europeans and the Russians are fighting over, Africa is so rich in terms of its resources. And then you mentioned the young folks and the changes that they're having. You look at Tanzania's presidency, and the fact that they might be giving something away, but young folks like the leader in Burkina Faso are saying we're not going to continue to be exploited the way we have in the past. So perhaps this shift in consciousness is something that will enable the people to benefit from what they have, the resources that they have. You talk about the Chinese, and they're addressing the infrastructure needs of the countries that they're dealing with. One of the big things that happened is that the Europeans left those countries, but they didn't leave infrastructure that would put those folks that were in those countries in a position to profit. They didn't have factories. They just took the raw materials and then they used them for their own devices. So again, we're looking at these paradigm shifts and very hopeful, with the youth on the continent of Africa and the changes in leadership, that we can actually move the needle so that Africans around the world can benefit from what can happen as a result of what's in Africa. I want to shift gears just a little bit, Dr. Moore, and talk to you about the impact of psychologists. You mentioned Frantz Fanon, you mentioned Naeem Akbar, Dr. Amos Wilson. A lot of the most significant minds that we've had in our race in the past 100 to 200 years have been psychologists. Can you talk a little bit about the impact of African-centered psychologists on the mindset of African Americans and Africans around the world?
Yeah, the Association of Black Psychologists began in 1968. And why? Because they sat in the rooms with the American Psychological Association and seeing the conference and continually seeing that all of our agenda items were being overlooked, not being addressed. They walked out the meeting and created their own organization in 1968. So even prior to 1968, yes, we've had black psychologists that have had some influence. Francis Cecil Sumner, he's the first black psychologist with a PhD, 1920s, went to Lincoln University, my alma mater. He was very influential, went to Howard University and helped us start the black psychology and psychology there, but having an influence on our position in the world. When you think about just psychology, not even just psychologists saying this, but if you ever heard of Steve Biko, Steve
Yeah.
Biko,
Yes, yes. South Africa.
Pan-African Congress. He wasn't part of the ANC. He was Pan-African. So he was like the Black Panthers over there versus the ANC was like NAACP over here. One of the most powerful statements he said is that the most powerful tool in the hand of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed.
Yes.
That's psychology right there. Malcolm X, I consider him the master psychologist. He didn't have any degree in psychology, but that brother could put the words together to make you say, man, stand up, put your back erect, and walk with a purpose. That's psychology right there. So when you look at the person who did have the degrees, have you ever heard of Bobby Wright? Bobby Wright,
Yes.
from Chicago, he wrote the Psychopathic Racial Personalities. And he talked about one of his the beginnings of the book talks about the matador who has like a cape and the bull runs past the cape. The matador is behind the cape and the bull keeps running, but there comes the time where that cape ain't gonna be there, and now it's the moment of truth. And so with people like Bobby Wright, he says the reason why black people kill black people because they've never been trained to kill white people. Jacob Carruthers wrote a book called Intellectual Warfare. He was a psychologist, but you look at the dynamics of information. When you have information that changes your mind and your direction in life, oh, you can change the world. That's why the white man didn't want you reading. Cut your fingers off, your arms off, your lips, tongue if you caught you reading a book. That's why when I go in the store and I got a book in my hand, I feel like I got a weapon. You know what I mean? I'm walking into the bookstore. I take my mom to the bookstore, so now my mom at the store, so she can go ahead and look shop. And I'm reading a book. I feel like I got weapons in my hand. They might get me because I got a book in my hand.
You sitting in the war room right there, brother. You got an arsenal surrounding all those powerful words, man. That's amazing.
Yeah.
We
I
got
just
a
want
question.
to. Yeah, I was going to address that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Veronica Walton. She says, "What is the motive for China helping develop African infrastructure? Who's owning land and resources in Africa?"
Excellent question. Like I said, you can go ahead and look at both sides of the story where people want to have written documents that, the Chinese are coming there exploiting. You heard the stories about them coming in and treating the people bad there. They may be like the managers for some company and treating those Africans bad there. On the other end, you have people saying that, look, without those resources, you wouldn't have to pave roads, wouldn't have those lights, wouldn't have those bridges, which are not there because Africa has been underdeveloped. So in that context, it's both storylines. It's the issue of the Africans there being able to stand firm on making the right deals. Right. So I'm not saying China's going in there to colonize. If anything, hey, it's a matter of unity. We need this, you need that. Let's work together. Exactly. That's not how the white man went to Africa. Look at the policies in France. They maintain French only as official language, paying an annual debt to France for the benefits of French colonization. They said the central bank is controlled by the French treasury, accommodating a continued French military presence. They made policies to ensure that the African countries would not have independence. So China's not coming in there doing that. China, I wouldn't say they come in there like some benevolent, people that say that we'll give you everything without nothing in return. I mean, this is business. In China, you know why China is so powerful economically? Because they didn't take all them loans. All these other countries took them loans from the IMF. They took those loans and now they're strapped. All them African countries, they've got to borrow money from France, which is their money, and then get charged interest to get money. So it's like wherever these other countries, European countries have colonized Africa, have maintained the political and the economic control. I don't see China coming there doing that.
And that's a good point. And that's exactly what I was going to say, is that, yeah, of course, it's a business situation and China getting what they need out of it, but at least they're giving some returns back.
Big
See,
return.
what they don't know. See, China also canceled some debts over there. Okay. Also, as far as China is concerned, they're doing things. They building those infrastructures and helping the people over there. What people need to know that America could have had Africa wrapped up in a nice little bundle if they just did the right thing. If they just had love for the people over there. But in their way of thinking, in America's way of thinking, they weren't giving America's. I mean, they could have had these countries was in the past so in love with America, they could have had the whole doggone continent if they just done the right thing and been fair to the people. But their mission was to not give these folks a leg up. Look at what has America built? What has America done for this long, lengthy time that they've been in Africa doing their thing? How can you tell me Africa was still in the position that it is today when dealing with its infrastructure, its medical facilities, and things like that? How? Because America was hell bent on not doing anything to help those folks have a leg up. So, now, some folks are awakening and looking at elsewhere, India, China, Russia, for their services, supplies, and things. Now America's kind of go back door and put all this negative propaganda. Don't deal with them. They're going to do this. And you had the opportunity, a long time ago to wrap that continent up. And if you would have just been fair and have some type of equal exchange going on.
2 points. 2 points. Russia has a mountain named after Paul Robeson.
Wow, I didn't know that.
You hear what I just said?
Mhm.
Paul Robeson. America badgered that man, called him a communist, and took away his passport, blah, blah, blah. Russia has a mountain named after him. You ever heard of Patrice Lumumba?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
What part of Africa is he from?
Congo, right?
Congo.
Russia has a university called Patrice Lumumba University. Come on, African people. That is not happening in America. They don't honor African people like that. In Brazil, they have something called African Independence Day, November 20th. Because of Zumbi, an African brother who created the Quilombos, the Palmares, the area where the Africans ran away into the hillsides and created their own society. They got African Independence Day, and they have it in their structure. Do you have African Independence Day here in America?
No, sir.
Nah, you're trying to wipe African people off the planet, including the people living here.
Now they give us Juneteenth. They give us Juneteenth, bro.
Gave us.
Ain't of a pacification, But see, and that would you keep us on 3-screen, Vince, for a minute, and that what makes me mad. You know what I mean? And that's to let you know when we start talking about psychology and dealing with the mind and how the mind can be shackled even though it's free. It's I think that's a testament of it to where we have to ask for permission or we have to wait for permission to celebrate something that is culturally right and for us, fit for us, and we sit, you got people around the country that's been working hard with this Juneteenth thing for a long time, but not until the man put his rubber stamps on it and say it's okay for us to, then we go. See, that's a problem. Yeah. That's a problem. We don't need to have nobody give us permission to do something that we think is beneficial to us as a people, and that's how dependent that we have become, and we have to break those psychological chains.
Let me give you one quote by Fanon. It says, the disaster of the man of color lies in the fact that he was enslaved. The disaster in the inhumanity of the white man lie in the fact that somewhere he has killed man. So when we deal with all these problems in the world, seeking money and things and the material world, it's taking us away from what it means to be a human.
Come on now. Come on.
The European can't be nothing without money, without resources, without something that's made up and created. You look on your dollar bill, it says these are notes. I need money. So they only way they can beat somebody is to have that as the framework of what they're saying defines you as a man, to have some money. But that's not what it means to be a man. And then the thing is, so psychologically, think about this. Fanon also says the black man wants to be white. The white man slaves to reach a human level.
Mm.
I don't know if you heard me on that one.
Yes.
I
Now,
heard you on that one.
black man wants to be white, so we're trying to be like them. You know what I mean? Getting all these athletes get all these big cars and got the chains and got the all this material stuff. The white man, he just slaves to reach a human level. I mean, they just kill rapaciously. You know, just not worried about living comfortably. You see what's going on with the white people in North Africa now killing those Palestinians. I mean, they're like, kill them all. And the deep thing about it, y'all remember Khalid Abdul Muhammad?
Mm-hmm.
Strong brother who created the new Black Panther Party, but he was criticized harshly for the way he talked about South Africa and that part of the world. I don't know if you remember the words that he said that he was criticized harshly about, the South African white South Africans who were taking and killing the black people. Y'all remember all that?
I
Mm-hmm.
remember that conference. Yes, go ahead.
Man, he said, in South Africa, they don't want to leave, kill them all. So he said,
Mm.
kill them all. So he's saying that, right? But what's the white northern people in Africa doing right now with the Palestinians? Genocide. Kill them all. Kill them all. That's how they're talking. And my tax dollars is going to feed that. Man, that makes people angry. That makes me angry.
Mhm.
Well, it's like what you said earlier about another situation. It's a fight that doesn't involve us, but we're emotionally involved in it. And
Mm,
the other part is a hypocrisy of people claiming something that is not theirs. When we look at history, we those aren't the people of that land.
yeah.
But this lie has been perpetuated for so long, and the resources to support that lie have been perpetuated for so long that we're trapped. You know, I was thinking earlier, Dr. Moore, about the whole issue of psychology and the mind. And then I thought about the first Kemetic law, and
Mm-hmm,
that is the universe is mental. I think
mm-hmm,
that really speaks to the importance and the significance of psychologists and how they can shape our thinking and our self perception and our self image. One of the greatest deficits that we have in our community is the fact that we look at ourselves as lesser than, which would explain why we would want to be like the white man, because we don't actually know who we are, because they told us all of our lives that
yeah.
we aren't anything. And then, but then at the other end of things, they take credit for all the things that they got from us that have put them in the position that they are in today. So it's really important for us to understand the importance of having this mental acuity. We talk about AI. Tony Browder talks about ancestral intelligence. That's the
Mhm,
real AI. That's what we should be focusing on right now, as opposed to this whole idea that somehow artificial intelligence is better for us. I mean,
yeah.
if you look at the videos that we're watching, bro, you got all these bots that are doing narrations. They can't speak the way we speak because we know how to pronounce words that they don't get right.
Mm-hmm,
If you look at transcriptions on YouTube and you look at the words in the closed captioning, they don't capture the words that are being said. They leave room for things to be misinterpreted. And then we
right.
look at these things online like it's gospel truth.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
AI is not all that it's cracked up to be. Yeah, Chat GPT can write something in 3 seconds or less, but that doesn't mean that it's 100% accurate. So,
Yeah.
we want to rely on this artificial stuff when we have ourselves to rely on. What are your thoughts, bro?
So when I was preparing my presentation, I get time to type. So on your computer, you can go use the mic, speak, and the words come out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I was writing, without a Negro past, without a Negro future, it was impossible for me to live my Negrohood. Not yet white, no longer wholly black. I was damned. Now, the computer, every time the word Negro came up, there's a bunch of asterisks. It didn't even put the word in there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep. Asterisk was everywhere the word Negro was in my little passage I was trying to say instead of me typing it. So you're right. AI is not picking up. And we've discussed this in the past about how it's Racist because of the ways the people who created it. So
Mm-hmm.
if we talk about the dogs, they're like I guess dogs that can be used for police officers or whatever, and so they can recognize someone, and if they're looking to recognize dark or black or dark skin and certain hair type, attack those people more so than any other people. So yes, AI is
Mm-hmm.
definitely flawed, and we're in a position where if you start looking at the news, man, the news stories are so jacked up. They got something in the news story that's not even really relevant to what the article's about, but they captured your attention. They got you looking at it. And so the way news and the media is manipulating our thought process is damaging. And like I said, all those other places I've gone and traveled to, they're not watching our news. They're not hearing about those mass killings. I came back to America and got a white man up in Maine shooting everybody. They
Mm-hmm.
don't hear about that over there in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
That's here. And all these people doing these mass shootings, taking drugs, medications. Mine's all jacked up.
Mm-hmm. And that's an interesting point too. I was been in a few presentations when we talk about drugs and America making up 12% of the world's population and being responsible for 60% of the world's drug use, and that's leading me to say, Doc, when we start looking at behavior, back to the psychological piece and the mental piece, as far as behavior, how white folks behave and how black folks behave. Well, we're not running none of the institutions. We're not really responsible for a lot of the norms, traditions, and rituals that are taking place in this country. And then by you being placed, just like when you do deal with animals, and dealing with studying behavior, you put them on top of each other. You reward them for being a good boy and having them doing tricks and rolling over. So I'm saying that the behavior that they want to frown upon and look at black folks doing this, that, you created.
Mhm.
You are responsible for this. See, this a whole the whole psychological piece and being in mental shackles the way we are and how we respond. Something
Yeah.
that Dr. Amos Wilson talked about, a reactionary culture. This is what is being impeded on the people in our cycles, in our psychology. So, to be look at black folks and say, what's wrong with them or this, that, and other. The system created this type of mindset,
Yeah.
and some forms of rebellions, or some of us still trying to be independent in this way or that way, and being, rebellious against some of this behavior. Again, it's still an offshoot of what and how we act right now. So, for you can't point the fingers because we're not responsible for none of it. So you're in control, you running this, so everything that's taking place, you're responsible for.
Yeah. I was trying to find my book, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire. Because in there,
Mhm.
here's a piece. And again, the arsenal's downstairs. You know how you have in your house, you got weapons in certain places. Well, I got
Yeah.
weapons down there. But any situation in which A objectively exploits B is a situation of violence. Anything that hinders that person's pursuit to be a human is violence. And then how can it be the oppressor? No, how can the oppressed be the initiators of violence when what has created the situation has caused them to be oppressed?
Come on, that's what I'm saying. Yes, yes.
So Paulo Freire talked about that. That's Brazil. That's
Mhm.
1970s. I mean, all the work is there, man. We're just not paying attention. We're not reading. Some of us are teaching it, but we got to now process it and now make it work for us to again move forward in life rather than continually being manipulated by the outside agents. You just talked about the drugs. Y'all see that new Netflix program called Pain Hustlers? Heard about it?
No,
Pain
I seen it.
hustlers.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Yeah, Pain Hustlers. So it's just a storyline kind of talking about really not the Sackler brothers. They're kind of in there, but it's some other company and some other kind of situation. But that whole pain kind of protocol and then getting people hooked and not worried about what's going to be the problems that will come about in communities and people's lives and their bodies. No, just trying to make that money at any cost, make that money. And so that's why I'm saying somewhere man has been killed. It's all about making money in that dollar, not people in their health. I was over there in all them countries I seen. I ain't seen no drugs, no Walgreens. I ain't seen no CVS's, Rite Aids. I ain't seen none of that. Even Colombia, we were dealing with plant medicines, natural stuff. I mean, in America, they keep you hooked on those synthetic products. If you're on the synthetic products, now you're part of the system. I was just down there at FAMU, and I was having a conversation with some people who are pharmacists and people who run diabetes, and they never knew nothing about the coronavirus having an impact on that ACE2 inhibitor. I'm scratching my head. These are people who are like leaders. And y'all don't know about the fact that the coronavirus gets into your system by this ACE2 inhibitor? Man, we're in trouble with people.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's just, again, I was hoping, you know, with the invent of this thing called internet and social media and stuff like that, that it would, kind of wake our folks up to, more
Mm.
information and doing some things. But they went 5.0 on us with and giving us more garbage, to take our time and information and stuff like that. So
Dangerous, dangerous. That's what I'm saying. You two and what you've done and committed to the struggle and your integrity is there. I don't know if you've heard about some people that are in the media right now, and some of them in jail because they're like internet all stars, but they did some corrupt stuff. They got a brother in New York, see, Mr. Polite or Brother Polite or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
He
yeah,
got
yeah.
caught up. The brother now on what the Breakfast Club envies, getting caught up in some stuff. But y'all two brothers have been true to the game. So I appreciate you all in terms of what you've been doing for years now. And you're setting the tone. I mean, you brought me up to the Cleveland several times to, give a talk there. You have this platform right here, going from radio now to streaming. So there are those that will have the impact, and now you can go global. And so that's why I just give whatever I can to you all to make sure that your mission is accomplished.
Well,
Right on, brother.
speaking of missions, we do have your information on the screen. You have published several books, too numerous to mention in the few moments that we have left on the radio version of this show. But you can go to www.Dr. T. Moore, and you can hook up with his books and what's going on with him, his travels, and so forth and so on. We really appreciate you being with us, and we really appreciate what you share with our audience, because that's the way that we get through all the misinformation and disinformation that comes through mainstream media. We are going to continue our conversation online streaming. So, as always, thank you for pulling everything together for us right here on 1490 AM WERE. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your best day. Peace, everyone.
Peace.
Peace.
All right. So we're going to continue our conversation and remind folks that you can tune in on our Facebook page, 360 Info Network, facebook.com. You can also check us out on my YouTube channel, which is Vince Robinson, and then you have the Journey with Antonio. You can check us out live on his YouTube channel as well. So you got all kinds of ways to connect with 360 Info Network, not just on AM 1490 WERE, but also online. So we want to continue to encourage you to check us out this way. And the beauty of doing it online is that, as you have seen in the past hour, folks have been able to chime in, make comments, ask questions, and we'll also look in the future towards having you on the air with us. So we're going to post the StreamYard link to the 360 Info Network page, and that, if you want to be on the show with us, particularly in the second hour or the second half hour of the show, you'll be able to do that. So, with that, I just want to continue the conversation. Brother Hamtonio, was there something that else that you wanted to talk to
Yeah.
Brother Moore about?
Yeah, I was, yes, it was something that it fits right in the realm of the doc's expertise when we was just talking about drugs. And knowing our physiology is very, very important. And Doc is the one of the experts in that, and thinking about and talking about as far as melanin is concerned. Doc, could you give us a little brief synopsis on the relationship between the melanin in our body and drugs and how it affects the like, and something that we need to be aware of, having this melanin and how we operate, in this thing called life, and connection to animal kingdom, plant kingdom,
Mhm.
and all these other microwaves and everything else around us.
Yeah, I like to throw that dart back. Say, hey, did you read the book yet?
Yeah, some of it. Yeah, I'm getting through it, brother.
Y'all read
Hey,
Pigment Power
hey,
yet?
yeah. Oh yeah, I read Paper Power. Yes. Hey, you see? Oh, you can't see that. Yeah, you
Yeah,
see that? Oh yeah. Oh, we both own the books.
all right. Yeah.
Okay. All
So
right. Good.
the deep thing is that with Fanon as a psychiatrist dealing with the issue of blackness, wasn't really going to the physiology. No problem, because you're still just dealing with the issue of self development and knowing who you are. And so, since we've been told that black is bad and don't want to deal with anything to deal with, brown people and colored and whatever heck that means, we've lost a sense of, blackness is needed everywhere. I mean, I got this black shirt on and it's like 60 degrees down here. I was playing tennis today. Black shirt's okay. But you're not gonna wear no black shirt in 100-degree weather because your white gonna burn up. So black absorbs. So when you look at it as a biological entity, this topic we call melanin, this substance which is in our hair, our eyes, our skin, our internal organs, it helps to preserve life. How can I prove that? Go take a bite of that apple or that banana and sit out there on that table. Does it stay white like an apple? Does it stay white like a banana? No, it starts turning colors. It's turning brown because that brown is preventing spoilage on that live substance. The same thing's happening in your body. That's why that melanin on your outside of your body keeps you looking young and fit, because it's absorbing the toxicity around and not allowing that toxicity to destroy those cells. So it keeps you looking young and fit. Whenever you hear that word black don't crack, whatever that means, whatever you hear about melanin keeps you looking young and fit, whatever that means, it's because of the science behind melanin controlling your cells and keeping them fresh. That's outside the body. Guess what? Inside your body, it does the same thing. So when you talk about people who have mental problems and mental challenges, a lot of those areas in the brain that are melanated, that is darkly colored, if they're not darkly colored, not absorbing the energy, not kicking out the neurotransmitters, guess what? A person's going to have a problem with their mental state. And a highly classified neurodegenerative disorder that explains that is Parkinson's disease. So people with that problem with they can't stop the tremors, there's something going on in the brain. Those areas that are used to be melanated, no longer melanated, therefore they're not kicking out the chemicals to control the person's behavior. So we look at, I say, rather than looking at deficits, look at what happens if it works right. You do all the creative things and improvisational things that we do. So there's power in melanin, but so many people run from blackness that they're scared to talk about it.
You talked about what happens with Parkinson's, and you said that there are things in the brain that no longer exist. Is it possible to get those things back?
No, because when we hear about brain cells dying, yeah, it's true. I mean, once brain cells go, you're gone. I mean, they're not there for you. There's some things that can be regenerated. Yeah, there are some discussions that apoptosis does cause, is the cell death that does occur. But in general, if those brain cells go, you're in trouble. So there are some medications that can be given to kind of boost those chemicals that are being lost. It can help, but it doesn't really treat. So some of the major treatments are to give like deep brain stimulation implants. You can put that implant in the brain, and somewhere else in the body, you can push the button where electricity goes to the brain and helps the brain pulse. So that's not replacing the cells. So in general, no, it's not like you can go in and replace those cells. There were some early studies though with pigs where they were looking at taking fetal cells, and putting them in the brain, and then they start to grow. And that was like early studies. But what was the politics of that? It was called stem cell research. You heard of stem cells before?
No, yeah.
Yeah, so stem cells are really coming from the fetus. So yeah, those cells can then be used to answer your question, make those cells grow, but that's kind of like controversial research and people don't allow that to be done.
Well, one thing that has been brought up as a way to perhaps create a regenerative process in the brain is meditation. Can you confirm the impact of meditation on your brain health?
Yeah, I would probably say that's what I'm saying, that where I've been and I've traveled, didn't watch TV, well, not so much vacation, but I'm traveling, so no time to watch TV, which is telling you a vision. So that means you get more time to tune into who? Self. So in that relaxation and that piece of just tuning into self, you're really re-energizing your body. So if you're just looking at it from a level of your body, hey, well, perhaps you can now retrain your brain to start thinking different ways. That's what I'm saying. The media is so dangerous. All the stuff we're reading about. Why is Deion Sanders like the #1 news story we're reading about every day? So what? Colorado.
And Will Smith and all that, man.
All
Jada
that.
Pinkett, man.
Why are they even main stories for us to be listening to? So you can retrain your brain by what? Not even paying attention to that stuff. And so then your brain is rewired to now thinking a different way. And that's why I'm saying when you travel and go to those other countries and see people, you're not worried about the mass killings y'all have here because they don't have them over there. When I was in Colombia, doors stayed open. Not open, but I'm unlocked. They wasn't worried about anything. Over here, we're not thinking like that. So yes, I do think that you can retrain your brain, but it depends upon how you deal with the external substances coming in.
The idea of mass psychosis. I know you're really into the physiology of the brain, but you've also talked about being at a conference of psychologists. What are your thoughts about the possibility of a mass psychosis engineered through mainstream media and the impact that it has had on the way we think and the way we perceive reality?
Yo, I was gonna go to Guyana because I wanted to study, more of Walter Rodney. I mean, I know his family. His daughter, Asha Rodney, played tennis with her in the past. His wife was the head of the uh, public health program at Morehouse School of Medicine. Like I said, I just met her the last week and bought her books to help, all his books that she's marketing. And so, but Guyana, what is Guyana known for with that question you just asked me?
Jim Jones.
That was mass psychosis.
Mm-hmm.
My goodness, 800 people saying, look, drink the Kool-Aid because someone told you to? What? So people looked at that, was like, let's see, the CIA experiment. Could we really do this? Could it really happen? 800 people. So yeah, mass psychosis can happen, and we got the evidence from stories like that.
What, Doc, let me ask you a question, though. Have we advanced? I encourage our listeners to go and look up a documentary on YouTube by Dr. Charles Morgan. He is, and the setup is you see him like in a classroom setting, and then it's at West Point. You got some other Charles Morgans, but this the one you see him in a dark suit standing in front of a classroom, like lecture hall, and a guy introducing them in army fatigues, and they talk about the where they're at right now and dealing with this research of dealing with mind control. They say they're capable of doing the Will Smith thing and wiping your memory out. We're capable of actually implanting events in your mind to where you think you actually done this thing and that it's a part of your growing up or whatever. And then they talk about of why you sleep, that they can take information from your mind while you sleep and transfer it in. And I mean, it's deep, and I think we folks need to really take a look at that to see where they're going with this whole mind. So my question is, in a statement that you make a comment on, is how possible, this transfer, because transfer of information, airwaves that can actually be downloaded into people and having them act in a strange way. Because we talk about the 432 hertz and the 440 hertz as far as music is concerned, and how it's affecting people and emotions and getting them to act or respond. You think they zeroed in and perfected this type of stuff, and we all carrying the cell phones and all that type of stuff? What's your thoughts on that, Don?
Yeah, I mean, you're in police or law enforcement, so you see what's happening on the streets. I mean, how many kids know who Thelonious Monk is, or Ornette Coleman, or know who Charlie Bird was? I mean, they don't know because this music they're listening to today traps. It's trapping them. How's all these kids gonna be gangsters? Trapping them. You had Michael Irvin the other day talking about his kid singing about being a gangster. Like he grew up in a gated community. Talking about being a gangster. So yeah, people are being programmed. So everywhere you go, I was down at FAMU and I saw the graduation class for the pharmacy program, and not a lot of brothers in my classroom. I teach at a co-ed institution. Not a lot of brothers. Everywhere you go. Why is that? But they playing basketball and football, huh? And so they in this culture where they now got this so-called this. I wouldn't use hip hop because hip hop started for a certain reason, but the rap music is sending kids in the wrong direction. And that's why I'm saying, yeah, the mind's being manipulated on that level, and you can see it because you see the destruction going on in our own community. Brothers robbing brothers robbing their own community, brothers robbing. Why is that? Because they're being programmed. And you talked about him on the program, Amos Wilson. I know my book, that weapon is somewhere else in the house, but the book is called Black on Black Violence. What's the subtitle? The Psychodynamics of Black Self-Annihilation in Service of White Domination. So we're being programmed by creating these things of desire, get these things, and now you want to kill somebody for a thing, but not appreciate the person for being a human. And you travel the world, that same kind of context is not there. So there's a reason why they have it in the society right now, because you think about it, the most dominant threat to a ruling patriarchal society is another male. So you dismantle the male, castrate them, dismantle them. Guess what? You now have no threat. That's why they feared Deion Sanders, I guess, maybe going to the HBCUs and doing something. Oh my goodness, he might change the scope of how we run our thing. We might not have no more black athletes going to these white schools anymore. Oh, take them to Colorado. But ain't no black people. We're going to make it look like it is. Step by step, they take us away from our standing on and being strong and firm. And that's why, again, he's all in the media now. They're going to wait for him to get knocked down. They build you up, and knock you down. I don't know when it's going to come, but going to get knocked down because that's the way they operate.
This send a white girl at him and calls okay.
Something going to happen.
Well, you talk about getting knocked down. I think about Mayor Marion Barry. He was a mayor of Washington, D.C., and then hotel room, some crack, and boom.
That's what I'm saying. They set him up. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I got to ask this question because we're talking about psychosis and so forth and so on. Earlier in the interview, I was thinking about Elon Musk and Neuralink. You know, and the fact that they want to put something in your brain that will allow it to be given information, but perhaps also to read your mind. When you talk about control, that's the ultimate. Now, you know, the new phone is out. Elon Musk has a new phone out, and it runs circles around Samsung, and it runs circles around Apple. You know, and one of the aspects of the technology of this new phone is that it will be connected to Neuralink. On top of that, we've got these new glasses coming from Apple, you know, so you can wear these glasses. You've got the whole idea of wearing goggles and so forth and taking you into that metaverse. I mean, talk about mind control. I mean, this is the evidence of the intentionality of getting into people's mind and just basically taking control.
Yeah. I don't know if y'all watch Black Mirror. That's like a Netflix kind of series that has these kind of ways that technology can be used negatively. And one of the more recent ones, and I guess the most recent seasons, a woman, her whole life was being shown on TV because when you take these phones, there's a whole bunch of policies and things that you say, oh yeah, I accept that. But you didn't realize that you accepted something saying that they can use your data in any way they want. So her name is like all over the world, and people are seeing her do some bad things in life. Actually, what just happened a few minutes ago, and it's being played out like that. So yeah, the whole way technology is being used is problematic, and people aren't paying attention. When you speak about Elon Musk, y'all know he has something called Asperger's syndrome.
No, I
didn't. You knew that? That's one of those like autism spectrum disease problem. I mean, people don't really relate to people too well, and so you see why people get caught up in this technology. It's not human. So for us as African people, that's not even our reality. but we're
Yes.
caught up in that reality. And the people who are creating these things are not, they're white people. As they created, their orientation becomes fixated into the technology, and therefore is a disconnect for how that technology can be used. So I'm saying that people who don't know how to work with people anyway, oh, they love this stuff. None people love not going to work now. They can stay home, work from home. You know how disconnected that's making people from what being able to converse with someone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we used to have masks on, so you can't even see what a person or feel what they're saying because you got the mask on. So now, so it's disoriented us. So like we're no longer able to really act like humans anymore. We're already functioning like computers because the way that we've been constructed to kind of think, not to like look at your brother and your sister, and the kids calling them dogs and bees and H's. I mean, so they're being programmed not to look at us as together, but as split up. The
Yeah.
technology is serving that capacity. You're at home. You could be at home. You can do everything in the world. Push the button. Now, hey, there's Maurice Bishop. I just told you about. Now you found him. Versus going to a book. You just asked about melanin and psychology. Where's the books on African health psychology? You got to go to the book to find it. You can't just go push a button because it's not going to be there.
Yeah, that's what I think they're doing, Doc, and it's getting us to that particular point to where, because that's, people need people. That's why the shelter in place was kind of detrimental, and people wasn't getting in touch with folks and having that type of harmonic type of togetherness going on. So now they're further taking us apart. And it's almost like you can almost use the analogy of when you should see those old army pictures and they try to destroy the lines of communications in order to win the battle.
Mhm.
So it's like separating us from this human touch, from the human voice, from the energy or the sharing of energy going back and forth with people, or what we do in this whole entanglement thing that we may talk about in the cosmos, and being in touch with everything else on the universe. Now the question is psychological, because I know psychologically that when they did experiments of burying people up underneath I mean, not bury them, but taking people underground, and they didn't get a chance to, abstaining them from that frequency from the earth, how they started going kind of crazy a little bit because they was out of touch with the earth's frequency itself. So it's the same. So what could be imposed on an individual as far as psychologically, if now they got you separated, they got you in tune to this electronic artificial energy that they can just dictate policy. What is they opening you up for that ability to do that? You understand where I'm going with that, Doc?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the whole European mentality is about control. That's why they don't want
Mm-hmm.
Africa doing what they're doing. That's why they don't want other countries coming in there doing what they, unless they're doing it. So in that control state, you got to do whatever you can to ensure that that subject is modified and altered. So if they're controlling the environment and dictating who communicates with who, it
Mm-hmm.
impacts on how you respond to other people. I wrote, I don't know if you remember, I wrote the Sucker Punch pamphlet. I
Yes.
wrote the Sucker Punch pamphlet about, again, putting these drugs and this stuff out there, and then later on, you're gonna wonder why you're dying quickly of cancer, or why you now got all these health problems because you took something that maybe now exacerbated something that was already going on in your system. In the isolation in animals, if you isolate hamsters and you keep them by themselves, guess what? You make them they're already spontaneously aggressive, but being territorial animals, you make them more aggressive by isolating them by
Ah.
themselves. So they start fighting one another even more when they now come into contact with one another. And all these people who are doing these mass killings, they got social issues. Them white boys that were in when they bowling for Columbine, which Michael Moore did, talking about when them white boys shot up them kids in Denver, in Columbine, Colorado. Oh, they were being ostracized by their classmates. They had to get that little old gang together out there in that little old suburban area, but they're taking medications, antidepressants. That white boy that was up in Maine, he was hearing voices. I wonder what he was taking. So all this social disconnect and these medications are taking us away from actually how we should be treating people. If you think about it, for us as African people, we don't really shouldn't be isolate people and just you and the therapist talking. You need to bring the whole crazy family in. So we need to have a discussion. What's going on at home? What's happening when you're going to school? What's happening in those environmental structures? And right now, we have a disengagement of dealing with the whole person. And so we as African people, in the way we deal with being therapists, we collectively look at that. And that's what we talked about Frantz Fanon earlier. Frantz Fanon changed the game about how you dealt with the Algerians and them being treated for so-called mental illnesses. They were being treated differently than the French that were over there. And so they looked at the Algerian culture and things that they needed. Oh, guess what? They started to rise up a little bit better rather than disconnecting them. And so we have a problem in our school systems because the kids feel disconnected, so they don't want to learn. So they go hang out in the street, listen to rap music, now they're shooting one another. So we don't control this from the home environment. For us as African people, that's why we get caught up with the outside agents messing things up. But on a level of social control, yeah, it's easy to say, take a pill, come back, see me tomorrow.
You know, that's interesting. When you talk about trauma and when you talk about the role that psychologists and psychiatrists can play, you know, we've been affected by trauma for a long time, but we tend to focus on our physical health. So, you know, we're battling with obesity and all the things that happen when the body breaks down, but we're not really prone to get into some type of mental therapy. And just seems that there's just as much a need for the mental as there is the physical, and as well, I mean, the spiritual. I mean, we're very spiritual people, as evidenced by our participation in the Black church and so forth and so on. But you know what you're sharing with us just brings me into the thought of how important it is for us to address our mental state. And I also go back to what Antonio said about drugs. You were saying that 60% of the world's drugs are consumed by Americans, which is really interesting in light of the fact that probably most of the pharmaceuticals, and I can't document this because I'm not an expert on it, but I know that a lot of the pharmaceuticals that we use in America actually come from China. So when we have this idea about the enemy of countries one against another, and
Yeah.
we see that, you know, we're looking at China kind of as an enemy of sorts, and we look at the Russians kind of as an enemy of sorts, but at the same time, if the Chinese said, okay, no more drugs for America, what happens to America?
Yeah.
If the Russians say no more uranium for America, what happens to America? You know, they implemented those sanctions against Russia because of the war in Ukraine. But as I understand it, the one thing that they didn't touch was the ability to get uranium from Russia to America. You know, so who's the enemy? The other thing that
Yeah.
I wanted to point out, and this goes way back to the beginning of our discussion, the idea of who's financing military operations.
Yep.
When you look at war, and you can go back to World War One and World War Two, who was financing the wars but the Rockefellers? You're providing weapons to both sides. So there is an agenda that we're not thinking about. When you think about the US budget, you know, there's a lot of money in this budget that goes towards the military. So you got to have war, and we talk about this all the time, but you got to have war in order for the military industrial complex to prosper,
Yeah.
because you got all these weapons stockpiled. They're not doing you any good if they're just locked up in a vault somewhere. You
Yeah.
know, you think about missiles, brother, they put 500 ounces of silver into a missile. 500 ounces of silver, which is a store of value that gets blown up somewhere. I mean, and somebody got paid to do that, you know. So it you know, it just seems like it's always about the money. And you talked about early paradigm shifts. Well, you know, for a long time, the U.S. dollar has been the U.S. reserve world currency. It was, before that, it was a British pound, and then it became the U.S. dollar. And now you have Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Egypt,
Yeah.
United Arab Emirates, all these entities, and they're saying, hey, we ain't using the dollar anymore. And they're moving towards a commodity backed currency, which is, guess what Muammar Gaddafi wanted to do for Africa. He wanted to unify Africa and strengthen their position when it came to currency. So it's not a coincidence that there's a thread running through all of these things. And just within the past few months, there was a deal that resulted in somebody purchasing petroleum with something other than the US dollar. Guess what they used? They used the Chinese yuan.
Mm-hmm.
And they used a digital currency. And that digital currency is a central bank digital currency that is now in use. See,
Mm-hmm.
so we're seeing a revamping of the world economic system. We're seeing a movement towards a global currency, a global taxation paradigm. All of these things, they're happening right now, folks. We always talk about what's coming down the line. This is already happening right now. There's a new
Yeah.
payment system in place in America. It's called FedNow. And FedNow is the precursor to the implementation of central bank digital currencies. And they have to do something because of
Mm-hmm.
all of the inflation that's taking place, all of the money that they continue to dump into the money supply, which results in inflation and devaluation of the currency. We're going to get to a point where the US dollar is not worth anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
But this is against the backdrop of tokenization. So you got Chase, JP Morgan Chase Bank. They're creating a platform for tokenization. You got Citibank doing the same thing. Their plan is to digitize assets so that they can continue to do this wealth transfer that's taking place right now. And then, Brother Antonio, you brought up earlier the possibility of another pandemic and
Mm-hmm.
more lockdowns and more isolation and more mind control. You know, I mean, there's so many things in play right now. I certainly hope that you are wrong about that because I don't I don't know if the world can take another
Yeah, yeah,
seismic shift like the one we had.
yeah, let me say one thing, Doc, before you answer that question. That's my prediction. It's just my theory and prediction because of all the stuff. I tell people to go listen to Dr. John Campbell's YouTube version. He be giving you a world perspective on what's going on with the excess deaths and things. If more of that type of information leaking out. They talking about how the jab was, and these people, like you said earlier, about their illness is exacerbating because of certain. It's a lot of excess deaths is going up. So my prediction is that, well, my theory. Let me just say it like that. My theory would be that, we worried in this country about the civil unrest part that may be the putting this country at some deep ends right there. But what might join the whole people, I mean, most people together, if they come out with this other pandemic, that might be the stick that broke the camel's back that may cause this real big pushback in this country.
Yeah, I told you I traveled to 7 different countries, didn't get sick at all, you know. So they got the fear that, oh no, there's something out there, the boogeyman's going to get you. It's like, so you live in that fear, you're going to be stuck. Uh, Harriet, no, not Harriet, Harriet Washington. Yeah, Harriet Washington wrote a book called Medical Apartheid,
Mm-hmm.
but she also wrote a book called Deadly Monopolies. And she's talking about whole the drug industry, and the whole health industry, how it's changed. And they're not making money off of those pharmaceutical drugs anymore. So where they have to make the money off of? And she wrote this in 2011. They're making it off of vaccines. They got to make vaccines. So that's why it's a money thing. So with the drugs, as you were saying, Brother Vince, that's why they got a concern about Mexico and this fentanyl, because that's where the fentanyl is being, I think, fentanyl in China. That's where the concoctions are being created, and being brought over here and made even more deadly. So people are like, oh, it's Mexico causing the problem. Oh, it's China is causing the problem. So you're right. The geopolitical nature of those other places with the markets, America don't mind because it keeps the people dumb, stupid, and dead. Keep the people dumb, stupid, and dead. They keep getting over on you. And that's where the power is. They keep the people dumb and stupid. And that's why I'm now in a position where my money is going where I don't want it to go. My tax money. You got people in power concerned about, irrelevant stuff, but not what I need. But that's my tax money that's doing that. That's why people should be up in arms about some things that are happening. But if you keep the people dumb and stupid, think about Deion Sanders all the time, Taylor Swift, Kelsey was the name, the white boy on Kansas City. If these are the major news items, you'll never get to what's really going on.
Mm-hmm. I agree, Doc. Let me throw this in real quick, and I know probably be leaving out in a little bit. See if we can get over to Dr. Barish today's lecture. But that's the crime. The crime is our complacency. You know, when you just talked about those particular things that we should be doing, talking about, and paying attention to, and this is a prime example of that. Yeah, I just talked to a friend of mine again that talked about his retirement, and guess what? Having a hip replacement. Okay, hip replacement, knee replacement, prostate, dementia, cancer, prostate cancer, and all this old stuff, diabetes, running rapid. And we'll get complacent to the point that we accept it as being normal. That's the tragedy.
Yeah.
Normal. And where's the outcry? Where's saying, hold on, let's pump the brakes, y'all.
People sleep.
That's what I'm saying. It's a prime example. Why is all these people? What's wrong with all these people knees and hips and breaking their feet and all this old craziness that's going on? As far as the body is concerned, these young folks, coming out with these ailments that they shouldn't even have, and if they did get them, they should be 80 years old getting them. Where is the outcry? They don't lure us to sleep. Well, all this is going on around it, and we looking at it as being acceptable. And hey, I just got my hip replaced. I just got 2 knee replacements. Like, what the devil is going on?
Let me throw this out to you real quick then about the names, because the sister who they marketed out there, who had, I guess, created some technology. I think her name is Kitty or Kittredge or something like that. Where's he at? Fauci. He's no longer in place. Where he at? The CDC. This guy Redfield and this woman who came after him. Where are they at? You don't hear them names anymore. You don't hear any of those names. You got that boy, the boy Bill, still out there trying to control the world now, control food populations, but you don't hear the people talking about this stuff anymore. It's almost like the plan has worked. It's in place. Now take them out the media, because they were in the media every day, pushing it down people's throat, making them do something that they didn't want to do, and they did it anyway. That's mass psychosis. That's mass control. I'm just saying the reality is you don't hear them people in the media anymore. Where'd they go? Can you answer that for me?
No, I can't answer it for
you. Interestingly enough, they were a major part of creating a paradigm of fear, and we're trapped in it now. So even now that masks are not required, you see people walking around with masks all the time, in the car, driving from here to
themselves.
Right. You're in the car by yourself, breathing your own oxygen, and you have fear of taking breath. The most vital thing to your existence. Without breath, you ain't living.
Yeah.
But just to kind of wrap things up, we've talked about things of a lower vibrational nature. Tuning in, TV set, the tablet screen,
absolutely,
phone computer, it lowers your vibration. I've actually noticed, Dr. Moore, sometimes when I'm online and I'm looking at my computer screen, it seems like I kind of tense up, and I have to tell myself to relax. But keeping us in a lower vibrational state, in a survivalist mentality, puts us in a position where we don't elevate to our higher levels of consciousness. Yeah. So when we exist in this state of perpetual stress, fear, anxiety, worry, anger, all those things, as they manipulate our brains and our mindset, it keeps us in a place where we're susceptible to disease and function. And it's been a very effective strategy because, as Antonio was saying, we normalize having diabetes. We normalize having high blood pressure. We normalize all these things that are supposed to happen as we age. And we don't acknowledge the fact that if we are proactive, Dr. Moore, and we eat those fruits and berries that have the high antioxidants that fight the free radicals, we can be doing things to fight off the things that they're pushing on us. So it just behooves us to elevate our minds and pull ourselves out of that survival mentality into a place where we can do things to effectively manage our reality.
Man, kids are running from the farm, running from getting the fingers dirty because they say, I ain't no slave no more. I don't want to do that stuff. But they're going to go to what dollar store get their sandwich. They're going to go to what Dollar General to get some food. It's like, so their whole mentality has changed about how we deal with life and health. So if you're dependent upon them dollar stores for your food items, you're going to die fast. I mean, even if you think about the fast food industry, they're merchants of death. It's fast food, but it'll kill you quick. We don't think like that. When you start thinking like that, I think you put yourself in a better position to thrive and move on. All I'm saying is that when you travel and go throughout the world, this same kind of mentality is not there. It exists, but it's not pervasive. And I'm saying it's pervasive in this society here because it's all about control.
All right. Any final words, anything you want to promote before we conclude our broadcast today?
Basically, I want people to be able to travel as you travel and you read and you aspire and you get intelligence and you lead. You set a trail. It's like the first letters in all those. You set a trail. Create your own trail. Like I said, we start off with Prince Fanon. I looked at him as somebody for me to follow. You know what I mean? Somebody that has set the trail, set a path, has a torch. Let me take the torch. So everybody, get your own trail, get your own path, and change the world. That's what we need to be.
Let me interject something Dr. Amos Wilson said in reference to that. We as Black folks around here waiting for the future instead of creating the future.
Right. Up to us.
Absolutely. Well, with all that said, we want to thank you for joining us again on 360 Info Network and on 360 Page 2, which is what we're doing right now. We so appreciate your wisdom, your knowledge, your understanding. Every time we get together, we learn, and I'm sure those who are listening and watching us learn as well. Thanks for joining us.
All right, my brother. We'll be talking, brother.
All right. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your best day.
Peace. All right. Respect you, Black man.
Peace. All right, now. All right. I'm going to see if I don't know. They wanted us to